My husband faked cancer to ask me for a divorce. Crushed, I agreed. Immediately after, he happily ran to get married to his mistress. But when my lawyer told me I had inherited $100 million, my ex-husband's family came begging for me back. I smiled with disdain and said just one word: leave. I was sitting paralyzed on the cream-colored leather sofa. My hands, tightly clasped, rested on my knees. On the walnut coffee table lay a thin stack of white papers. It looked harmless, but the black ink printed on it held the weight of 1,000 tons, pressing the air out of our spacious living room until it was suffocating. Across from me was Damien, the man I had shared my life with for 5 years. He was a bit thinner, with dark circles under his eyes, and his face, always immaculately groomed, now looked haggard and pale, a perfect look for the role he was trying to play. "Iria," Damien said in a hoarse voice, stifling a dry cough, "I know this is sudden, and believe me, I didn't want things to end this way, but the doctor says I don't have much time left." He pushed the stack of papers toward me. "Terminal pancreatic cancer. They say 6 months at most." I lowered my head so my long hair would hide my face, to conceal the mocking smile that was threatening to appear on my lips. This whole act was far too elaborate. Slowly, I took the medical report and flipped through the pages one by one. The doctor's signature, the hospital's red seal, everything looked authentic. Damien had put considerable effort and money into this, but he didn't know that just the week before, my best friend had sent me a photo of Damien with his arm around a beautiful young woman named Summer at a luxury resort in Miami. They looked radiant, happy, and full of life, especially Damien, whose smile was so bright it could have lit up a whole corner of the sky. He looked nothing like a terminally ill man on the verge of death. "Why? Why did you hide it from me?" I looked up, forcing a look of shock and pain. My eyes began to well up with tears. I had practiced this expression in front of the mirror hundreds of times. I had to act perfectly so Damien wouldn't suspect a thing. Damien leaned across the table and took my hand. His hand was freezing. "I didn't want you to worry. Look, for the last few months I've been making up business trips, but I was really going for treatment, unsuccessfully. I don't want to be a burden on you and our family, Madison. Let's get a divorce." The word divorce, said so softly, was like a knife straight to my heart, not from pain, but because it confirmed everything I had suspected. He wanted his freedom. He wanted to be officially with his mistress. And he wanted to get rid of me as peacefully as possible so he could keep this house, this business, all the assets we had built together, or rather, the assets my father had mostly left me. "No, I don't agree," I said, pulling my hand away and shaking my head as tears fell uncontrollably. "If you're sick, I will take care of you. No matter what, I won't abandon you. We took our vows." Damien sighed, a sigh full of exhaustion and false nobility. "Madison, don't be naive. I don't want to spend my last days watching you suffer for me. I want you to find another man, a better one, who can take care of you. Consider this the last thing I do for you. I've already prepared all the papers. I'll leave you this house and transfer all my shares in the company to you." His words sounded so sweet, so selfless, but I knew perfectly well that our company was drowning in debt after a failed project led by Damien himself. And this house was mortgaged to the bank. He was leaving me a complete mess while he planned to run away with the money from the secret fund he had been siphoning off for a long time. I looked deep into Damien's eyes, trying to find some trace of the man I once loved. But all I saw was deception, calculation, and chilling cruelty. My father had warned me about Damien. He said that a man from a humble background with unrestrained ambition would stop at nothing to achieve his goals. Back then, I was young and believed in love. I argued with my father, thinking he was prejudiced. Now, every one of his words resonated with me. I rested my head on the table, my shoulders trembling. My crying was muffled and sounded truly pitiful. Damien got up, came around the table, and hugged me. "It's okay. Don't cry anymore. Everything will be fine. I'm only doing this for your own good." I let him hug me. Inside there was no pain, only a terrifying emptiness. love, trust, everything had been shattered. All that was left was a simmering hatred that burned in silence. Okay, Damien, if you want to act, I'll act with you. I'll play the role of the abandoned, pitiful wife, and we'll see who ends up really crying in the end. I lifted my face. My eyes, filled with tears, looked at him. Yes, if that's what you want, I accept. Damien was a little startled. He probably didn't expect me to agree so quickly, but then a flash of joy crossed his face, so fleeting that if you weren't paying attention, you would have missed it. He quickly covered it with a pained expression. Thank you, Madison. Thank you for understanding me, he said, his voice filled with feigned gratitude. But I knew that inside, he was celebrating having gotten rid of me so easily. The curtain on his play was about to fall, and I was ready for my own performance. The day we went to the courthouse to finalize the divorce, a torrential rain suddenly fell on New York City. The heavy drops beat against the car's windshield, creating a melancholy and urgent sound, just like my turbulent mood. Damien was beside me, at the wheel, with barely disguised impatience. He wore an impeccable suit. He was probably going straight to another place to start his new life, as soon as he left here. It's done, Damien said, breaking the silence in the car. From now on, take good care of yourself. If you need anything, call me. I just made a small sound in my throat, my eyes fixed on the window. Call you for what? To hear you talk about your new happiness? Or to congratulate you and her? I thought to myself, but I didn't say it. I didn't want to waste another word on this man. The car stopped in front of the house. I opened the door and got out without a word of goodbye. Damien didn't linger either. He stepped on the gas, and the car disappeared into the curtain of rain as if fleeing from our 5 years of shared past. I stood there, letting the rain soak my hair and shoulders. I didn't feel cold, just an immense emptiness in my heart. My marriage had officially ended like this. I went into the house, took off my wet clothes, and made myself a hot chamomile tea with honey. The warmth of the cups spread through my body, helping me to calm down a little. I sat on the sofa, the same sofa where a few days earlier Damien had sat to give me the news that had crushed me. Everything in this house felt familiar, but now it felt strangely alien. Suddenly my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I hesitated for a moment, but finally answered, "Hello? Excuse me, are you Mrs. Madison Thorne, the ex-wife of Mr. Damien Hawthorne?" A deep, polite male voice sounded on the other end of the line. My heart sank when I heard the words ex-wife. "Yes, this is she. Who is this?" "Good morning, Mrs. Thorne. I am Julian Montgomery, your father, Mr. Edward Thorne's lawyer." My father had passed away almost a year ago. Why was his lawyer calling me now? A strange premonition came over me. "Yes, good morning, Mr. Montgomery. Is something wrong?" "Mrs. Thorne, I'm calling to inform you of an important matter. According to the will Mr. Thorne left, there is a special clause that activates the moment you are officially divorced. This clause refers to an inherited estate." I held my breath. An inheritance. Before he died, my father had left me the company and some savings. All of it had been merged with our shared assets with Damien. Was there something else? "Mr. Montgomery," the lawyer continued. His voice was still monotonous, but every word he spoke resonated like thunder in my ears. "Mrs. Thorne, this estate is valued at $100 million and includes cash, stocks, and several properties in prime locations. It has been held in a private trust fund, and now the legal ownership has been transferred completely to you." I almost dropped the cup from my hands. $100 million. The figure was too big, beyond my imagination. I never thought my father was so rich. He had always lived a modest life and had taught me to be independent, not to depend on the family fortune. "Lawyer, are you telling the truth? Why? Why did I not know anything about this?" "Mrs. Thorne, it was Mr. Thorne's wish. He wanted to make sure this estate belonged solely to you, to protect you from any risk. In the will, he clearly specified that the clause would only be activated when you were no longer in a marital relationship with Mr. Damien Hawthorne." Perhaps he foresaw some things. I collapsed onto the sofa, my head spinning. Now I understood everything. My father, that man who was always strict but loved me unconditionally, had seen Damien's true nature from the beginning. He didn't object to my marriage, but in silence, he prepared a way out for me. He used his own way of protecting his naive daughter. Tears welled up again, but this time they were not of pain or theater, but of gratitude and regret. "Dad, I was wrong." "Mrs. Thorne, are you all right?" The lawyer's voice brought me back to reality. "I'm fine. Thank you, lawyer." I quickly wiped away my tears. What should I do now? "If you don't mind, we could meet at my office tomorrow to discuss the details. I will send you the address." "Yes, okay, I'll be there tomorrow." The call ended. I put the phone down on the table, but my hands were still trembling. The rain outside had stopped. After the storm, the sky cleared, and a faint rainbow appeared on the horizon. I looked out the window, taking a deep breath. Everything had happened too quickly, too unexpectedly. The pain from my broken marriage seemed to have been eclipsed by another, more intense emotion. It was a feeling of empowerment. "Damien, you thought you had pushed me into the abyss, but you don't know that your own action has opened a completely new door for me. A door that leads to freedom, to wealth, and most importantly, to the opportunity to start my plan for revenge. Your play is over, Damien. Now it's time for my show to begin, and I promise you, it will be spectacular." The next morning, I chose a navy blue pantsuit, elegant and powerful. I put on a light coat of makeup, just enough to hide the fatigue from a sleepless night and highlight the confidence I was trying to build. I drove to the address the lawyer Montgomery had sent me. It was a prestigious law firm in a large building in Midtown Manhattan with a very professional and reputable look. A young secretary greeted me at the door and led me to the lawyer's office. The room was spacious, decorated simply but luxuriously, with a huge bookshelf filled with thick law books. Lawyer Montgomery stood up to greet me. He was quite young, about 35, tall, with a firm face and bright eyes that radiated intelligence and sharpness. He wore a custom-made suit that fit him perfectly, giving him a very elegant look. This was the man my father had entrusted with such a great secret. "Good morning, Mrs. Thorne. Please have a seat," he said in the same deep, warm voice I had heard on the phone. "Good morning, Lawyer Montgomery," I replied, sitting down in the chair in front of his desk. After the secretary served us tea, the lawyer got straight to the point. He slid a thick folder toward me. "Mrs. Thorne, here are all the legal documents related to the estate your father left you. You can review them." I opened the folder. Inside were countless documents, bank statements, stock certificates from major companies, and property deeds in prime locations. Everything was organized immaculately and clearly. The figure of 100 million was no longer an abstract concept. It materialized before my eyes in full detail. "My father, how long ago did he prepare all this?" I asked. My voice still trembled with disbelief. "Mrs. Thorne, Mr. Thorne began establishing this trust fund a year after you got married," the lawyer replied. "He said he respected your choice, but as a father, he had to be prepared for the worst-case scenario. He secretly hired me and my partners to investigate Mr. Damien Hawthorne." The lawyer took out another thinner folder and placed it on top of the one with the assets. "These are the results of our investigation over the last 4 years." I opened it with trembling hands. Inside was detailed information about Damien that even I, his wife, didn't know. Shady business deals, funds from unknown sources, and of course, information about his mistress, Summer. Summer was the daughter of one of Damien's business partners. She was very young, a recent college graduate. They had been together for almost 2 years. The report included photos of them on trips, shopping, and even invoices for the expensive gifts Damien had bought her with company money. The more I read, the tighter my fists clenched. So, he had been shamelessly deceiving me for so long. While I was at home worrying about the business's decline, my husband was using that money to spoil his mistress. The hatred inside me flared up with fury again. "Your father was a very cautious man," the lawyer continued. He not only created this fund, but he also established multiple legal firewalls around it. This ensured that Mr. Hawthorne or anyone else could not touch a single cent of this estate, even while you were legally husband and wife. The divorce was just the final key to open the door. I looked up at the lawyer. He spoke in a calm, professional manner, but in his eyes I saw empathy and respect. He was not just a lawyer, but my father's faithful collaborator. "Lawyer Montgomery," I said in a determined voice, "I want to ask you something. With this money and this evidence, what can I do against Damien Hawthorne?" The lawyer looked at me for a moment and then nodded slightly, as if he had anticipated my question. "Mrs. Thorne, your father has left you a very powerful weapon. The question is how you want to use it. You can choose to forget everything. Use this money to start a new life somewhere else." He paused and looked me straight in the eyes. "Or you can use it to claim justice for yourself. If you choose the second path, I and my partners will put all our resources into helping you." I didn't need a second to think. I choose the second path. Damien's betrayal was not just my personal pain. It also trampled on my father's love and sacrifice. I couldn't let the man who had deceived my family live comfortably and happily at the expense of others' suffering. I had to make him pay for everything he had done. "I want him to lose everything," I said. My voice was as cold as ice. His career, his reputation, and even the woman he left me for. I want him to taste the feeling of being thrown to the bottom of society, the same feeling he caused me. The lawyer nodded seriously. "Understood. Then, let's start to outline the plan. First, we need to consolidate your power. You will officially assume control of the investment fund your father established. It's called the Thorne Investment Foundation. Then we will start with the weakest links in Mr. Hawthorne's empire." He began to analyze Damien's financial situation, his projects, and his relationships with astonishing clarity. The lawyer's professionalism and intelligence gave me immense confidence. I knew that on the thorny path of revenge ahead, I was not alone. I had the backing of my late father and the help of a brilliant lawyer. The meeting ended after almost 3 hours. When I left the building, the bright New York City sun hit my face. I was no longer the Madison of yesterday, the submissive and pained wife. I was now the president of the Thorne Investment Foundation, with a colossal fortune in my hands and a sophisticated plan for revenge. "Wait for me, Damien. The game has just begun." A few days after taking control of the Thorne Foundation, the first thing I did was not to launch into big business plans, but to go back to the old office, the place that Damien and I had built together, to collect my personal belongings. I wanted to close that chapter for good. When I walked in, the atmosphere became dense. All eyes were on me. Looks of curiosity, pity, and even gloating. They had surely heard about my divorce, and with the company's debt situation, they assumed that I was the loser, a failed woman abandoned by her husband. I could hear the whispers behind my back. "Look how pathetic she is. They say her husband left her for some big shot's daughter. She deserved it. Before, as the director's wife, she acted like a diva." I ignored everyone, my head held high, and walked straight to my old office. The room was the same, except that the photo of our wedding on the desk had been replaced by a cactus, a change full of symbolism. In silence, I packed my belongings into a cardboard box, a few books, a few souvenirs, nothing too important. I decided I was going to get rid of everything that belonged to the past. While I was gathering my things, Amelia, the young assistant whom I had personally trained, came in. Of the whole company, Amelia was the only one who had treated me with sincerity. She came from a humble family, but was very hard-working and honest. "Mrs. Thorne," she called in a low voice, her eyes full of tears. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know things were going to end this way." I smiled at her. "Don't worry, Amelia. It's just one of those things. Thank you for all your help during this time." I took a small velvet box from my purse and gave it to her. "I have a small gift for you, as a thank you." Amelia opened the box with hesitation. Inside was an elegant Mont Blanc pen. It was the gift I had planned to give her when she was promoted, but now it was no longer necessary. "Oh, Mrs. Thorne, this is very expensive. I can't accept it," Amelia said, waving her hands. "Take it," I insisted. "You deserve it. Keep working hard. Even though I'm no longer here, I hope you have a brilliant future." I hugged her gently and, picking up my box, left the office. As I passed my old colleagues' desks, I stopped for a moment. I looked directly at those who had been gossiping about me just a moment ago and gave them a brilliant, enigmatic smile that they couldn't understand. "Goodbye, everyone. I'm leaving." They looked at me, astonished, probably not understanding why a failure like me could be so calm and happy. I didn't say anything else. I left the company with my head held high, leaving their looks of surprise and confusion behind. After leaving my old workplace, I didn't go straight home. I drove to a luxurious new development in Greenwich, Connecticut, where I knew Damien and Summer had just moved. I had asked lawyer Montgomery to investigate their address. The development was famous for its luxury, security, and of course, its astronomical prices. Damien must have used a good part of the money he embezzled from the company to buy a house here and please his young mistress. I went straight to the project's sales office. A very courteous real estate agent greeted me. "Good morning, ma'am. How can I help you?" "I want to buy a condo here," I said firmly. "I want the penthouse of Building A, the one with the golf course view." The agent was a little bewildered. That penthouse was the most expensive in the entire development. It was worth several $1,000,000 and had been on the market for a while without finding a buyer. "Ma'am, are you sure? It's a very big apartment, and the price—" "I know. I want to pay in cash. All at once," I said, placing my unlimited credit card on the table. "Please help me process it as quickly as possible." The agent's expression changed completely. He hurried to invite me to sit down, served me water, and called someone to prepare the contract. The whole process was incredibly fast. In a single afternoon, I became the owner of the most luxurious apartment in the development. And the most interesting thing was that my penthouse was on the top floor of Building A. Damien and Summer's apartment was on the 15th floor of that same building. From my balcony, I could see their little love nest with complete clarity. That night, after receiving the keys, I stood on the breezy balcony of my new apartment with a glass of Napa Valley Cabernet in my hand. At my feet, the city lit up with a spectacular glow. I could see the warm light coming from the windows of the apartment on the 15th floor. Surely, at that moment, Damien and Summer were having dinner, enjoying the happiness they had stolen from me. I took a sip of wine. Its slightly tannic flavor spread through my mouth. "Damien, will you be surprised to know that the ex-wife you just abandoned is now your neighbor? And not just any neighbor, but one of a completely different class. I won't do anything scandalous. I'll just be here, right above you, as a silent presence, a constant reminder of what you've done. Your peaceful life is over. This is just the beginning. The Queen has returned, and this time I will reclaim everything that is mine." The Thorne Investment Foundation was officially established just a week after I received the inheritance. Our office was on the top floor of a financial tower in the heart of downtown New York, with windows that offered a panoramic view of the city. The name Thorne not only was my father's last name, but it also evoked the peace and prosperity of a fortress, a reminder of the purpose of everything I was about to do. My first target was not Damien, but Brandon, my former boss at the architecture firm where I worked before helping Damien. Brandon was an arrogant and incompetent man, but a master at flattering his superiors and stealing others' credit. He had humiliated me on multiple occasions in front of my colleagues, criticizing my designs for being feminine and lacking vision, while behind my back, he would present my ideas as his own. The last time I saw him was at a company party. He was drunk and made suggestive comments, implying that I had gotten my position through my connections and not my talent. At that moment, to not embarrass Damien, I left in silence. But I never forgot that humiliation. Through lawyer Montgomery's network, I learned that Brandon's company was in trouble. He had taken out a large loan to invest in a real estate project that had stalled due to legal problems, leaving his company on the verge of bankruptcy. It was the perfect opportunity. I sent people from Thorne to approach Brandon as an investor interested in acquiring his company. At first, Brandon was arrogant. He demanded an exorbitant price, thinking we were a bunch of naive people with a lot of money. I didn't bargain. I instructed my representative to accept his price immediately, even offering a little more with a single condition. The contract signing had to be a grand affair at a 5-star hotel with the presence of the press and his most important partners. Brandon fell into the trap easily. His greed and vanity clouded his judgment. He thought it was an opportunity to get money and at the same time recover his prestige, showing how valuable his company was. On the day of the signing, Brandon showed up impeccably dressed and radiant, greeting everyone and boasting about his multi-million-dollar deal. He had no idea that the real owner of the Thorne Foundation was the former employee he had so despised. I watched everything from a private room through a camera. When it was time for the signing, my representative went on stage and gave a speech. Ladies and gentlemen, before we proceed with the signing, I have the honor of introducing the president of the Thorne Investment Foundation, the person who made the final decision on this operation. All eyes turned to the side of the stage. I walked out calmly, wearing a burgundy evening gown and my hair in an elegant bun. When Brandon saw me, the smile froze on his face. He stammered, unable to articulate a word. "Hello, Brandon. Long time no see," I said calmly, picking up the pen from the table. "It seems your company is worth something after all." I signed the contract with a decisive stroke. Then I took the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice echoing through the room, "I am Madison Thorne, President of the Thorne Investment Foundation. Today, I officially declare that we have completed the acquisition of the entirety of Mr. Brandon Pierce's company." Applause sounded. Brandon was still standing, petrified. I turned to him, smiled, and added, "And as the new owner of the company, my first decision is to fire the director, Brandon Pierce. The reason? Incompetence and a lack of professional ethics. You have 30 minutes to collect your personal belongings and leave the premises. The security team will assist you." The room fell silent. Brandon's face went from pale to livid, and then to an intense red of anger and shame. He pointed at me, trying to say something, but 2 burly security guards stood by his side. "How? How dare you?" "Of course I dare," I interrupted him. "This is for all the humiliation you put me through. Remember it well. Never underestimate a woman." With that, I turned around and walked away without deigning to look at his pathetic figure. The whispers, comments, and camera flashes behind me didn't bother me. A feeling of satisfaction came over me. This was just the first shot. It was sweet and gratifying. Brandon was just a pawn on my chessboard. And now it was time to aim for the most important pieces. Not long after moving into the penthouse, I quickly became familiar with the high society life of the development. The residents' social life was coordinated through a community WhatsApp group where people would often boast about luxury trips, new designer purchases, or simply gossip. I rarely participated, just observed in silence, until one sunny morning I decided it was time to greet my neighbors. I took a photo of my balcony with some blooming orchids and the city in the background and posted it in the group with a seemingly innocent message. "Good morning, everyone. I'm Madison, the new neighbor in the penthouse of Building A. This is my first time in such an exclusive community, so I'm still a bit lost. I hope for your advice." Immediately, the chat became lively. Everyone welcomed me, marveling at my apartment. Just as I expected, a few minutes later, Summer, Damien's new wife, also commented with a somewhat condescending tone. "Welcome, new neighbor. We live on the 15th floor. If you need help with anything, just say so." I smiled. The fish had taken the bait. I waited a little for the conversation to run its course, and then sent another message as if I had just remembered something. Oh, how embarrassing. I'm taking the opportunity to ask. "Does anyone know Mr. Hawthorne from 1508? The other day, after we signed the divorce, he asked me for some loose change to pay for the parking meter, and I just remembered. I've texted him, but he hasn't replied. If anyone sees him, could you remind him? Thank you so much, everyone. A trivial message, an insignificant amount of money. But in the context that I lived in the penthouse, Damien was my ex-husband, and the action of borrowing money for the parking meter and then not paying it back took on a completely different meaning. It painted the picture of a man so ruined after the divorce that he didn't even have money for parking and had to ask his ex-wife for it. The chat, which had been buzzing with activity, suddenly went silent. Everyone was probably taking screenshots and sharing them. A few minutes later, my phone vibrated. It was Damien's number. "Hello?" I answered sweetly. "Madison, what the hell are you doing?" Damien yelled on the other end. "What nonsense are you saying in the neighbor's chat? Do you want to embarrass me?" "Oh, what are you saying?" I feigned innocence. "I was just asking about the parking meter. If you borrow, you return. There's nothing to be ashamed of. Or have you forgotten? The memory of the sick sometimes fails." I deliberately emphasized the words, "the sick." Damien was speechless. He couldn't admit he wasn't sick or deny that he had asked me for money because that would make him look even more pathetic. "You're incredible. Don't mess with me." "I would never dare. You're terminally ill. I must show you respect," I said with sarcasm. "Well, if it's nothing else, I'm hanging up. I have a meeting at the foundation. Goodbye." I hung up without giving him a chance to say anything else. I had easily won the first round of this psychological war. I knew that from now on, every step Damien and Summer took in this community would be scrutinized and commented on. The happiness they were trying to project would become the laughingstock of their rich neighbors. That afternoon, I had a meeting with Lawyer Montgomery at the Thorne offices. He brought me much more important information. "We have audited the books of your old company," Julian said, placing a thick folder on the table. "Just as we suspected, Damien Hawthorne embezzled a very significant sum. The exact figure, according to preliminary estimates, is nearly $8 million. Although I was mentally prepared, I felt a pang in my chest. $8 million. It was the sweat and effort of myself, my father, and the employees who had once trusted him. The flow of money is very sophisticated through several shell companies," Julian continued. "But we have traced the final destination. A part, nearly $2 million, was transferred to the account of a company called Kincaid Promotions, LLC, and the owner of that company is Mr. Kincaid, Summer's father." So it was clear. It wasn't just infidelity. It was a calculated conspiracy between Damien and his mistress's family to steal my assets. The anger boiled inside me again. "Can we sue him right now?" I asked. "We could," Julian replied. "With this evidence, he would surely end up in prison. But do you want it all to end so simply? Or do you want to recover everything that belongs to you with interest?" I looked into Julian's eyes. I understood what he meant. Sending Damien to prison now was too easy. It wouldn't calm the hatred I felt. I wanted to have ruined him, left him penniless, begging for my forgiveness in desperation. "Understood," I said. "For now, we will keep this evidence. It will be my ace in the hole. For now, let's focus on the next plan. I've heard that the Kincaid Group, his family's company, is trying to get a big government project." Julian nodded with a complicit smile on his face. "The affordable housing project in the city's east side. A very big pie, and I know you're not going to let them eat it so easily." The real battle had just begun. The public housing project that the Kincaid Group was vying for was not just a construction job. It was a key project for the city with great political and social significance, aimed at providing affordable housing for working families. Any group that won the bid would not only get huge profits, but also invaluable prestige and relationships with the administration. For the Kincaid Group, which was looking to expand its power, it was an irresistible morsel, and for me, it was the perfect battlefield to strike a mortal blow against Damien's family. To compete in such a large-scale bid, the Thorne Foundation needed a construction company with capacity and reputation. Brandon's company, which I had just acquired, was too small, but I already had another target in mind: Eastside Builders, a renowned company that was going through financial difficulties. I quickly used the financial power of Thorne to acquire a majority stake, take control, and place my people on the board of directors. Everything was done silently and quickly. Now I had a sharp sword in my hands. The next step was to get to know the enemy. I needed to get internal information from the Kincaid Group, especially the detailed bid they would present to the project committee. This was almost impossible, but I had a way no one expected. I called Amelia, my former assistant. I was still in contact with her. I knew that Amelia had a cousin, Joel, who worked in the planning department of the Kincaid Group. Joel was a good guy, but he was addicted to gambling and had a considerable debt. I met Amelia at a quiet cafe. I didn't get straight to the point. I asked her about her life, her work. Then I subtly mentioned Joel. "I heard your cousin Joel is going through a tough time. Is that true?" She was startled. Her face changed. "Yes. How do you know?" "I just happened to hear about it," I said, placing a thick envelope on the table. "Here's $50,000. Give it to him to pay off his debts. Consider it a helping hand from me." Amelia, horrified, rejected it. No way. It's too much money. We can't accept it." "Don't worry," I said, taking her hand. "I see you as a sister. Helping you is the right thing to do. I'm only asking for a small favor. I know Joel works at the Kincaid Group, and I'm very interested in the housing project they're preparing. Could you ask him to help me get some information about their plans? Just the basics." I spoke softly, but Amelia was smart enough to understand what I wanted. She looked at me with a complex expression. She knew it was wrong, that it could get her cousin into trouble, but the money in front of her was too great a temptation, the salvation for her cousin. "Mrs. Thorne, don't worry, nothing will happen to him," I reassured her. "Everything will be done with the utmost discretion. When it's all over, I'll get him a better job at my company, with a much higher salary. Think about it." I left the envelope on the table and left. I knew she would accept. Human loyalty has its limits, especially when one is cornered by debt. Just as I expected, 2 days later, Amelia called me. She had convinced her cousin. One night, Joel secretly copied the entire Kincaid Group's bid file onto a USB drive and gave it to me. It contained everything: the detailed plans, the budget for materials, and most importantly, the final bid price. With the USB in hand, I knew I had victory secured. My team and I worked all night analyzing our competitors' documents. They had presented a very competitive price, but I discovered a fatal weak point. To reduce costs, they planned to use building materials of inferior quality from unknown suppliers. It was a dangerous fraud, especially for a housing project for working-class people. I smiled. Damien and his family were capable of risking people's safety for money. I didn't just want to win the project. I wanted to unmask their hypocrisy and greed in front of everyone. Based on the information, I instructed my team to prepare a new bid. We proposed a price slightly lower than the Kincaid Group's, but committed to using top-quality materials that met international standards. At the same time, I asked lawyer Montgomery to prepare a detailed dossier exposing the Kincaid Group's plan to use low-quality materials with evidence about the shady origin of their suppliers. Everything was ready. The trap was set. All that was left was to wait for the day of the bid opening to see the prey squirm. A few weeks before the official bid opening, the Association of Builders held its annual gala at one of the most luxurious hotels in New York City. It was an event that brought together the big names in the industry, a place to network and also to show off status. I knew that Damien's family and the Kincaid Group couldn't miss it, and I decided it would be the perfect stage for my return. It had been a long time since I had appeared in public as a businesswoman. People still knew me as Madison, Damien Hawthorne's submissive wife. That night I chose an emerald green evening gown, a simple design that elegantly enhanced my figure. My hair was in soft waves, and I wore natural makeup that highlighted my powerful red lips. I didn't go alone. Lawyer Montgomery walked beside me, impeccable in a black tuxedo. His presence was that of a partner, but also a silent affirmation of my new position. When we entered the ballroom, all eyes turned to us. The music seemed to stop for an instant, and the whispers began. They were surprised, not only by my presence, but by my completely different aura. I was no longer the woman with a sad, resigned look. Now my gaze was sharp and confident. Every step I took radiated the composure of someone who is in control. And then I saw them. Damien and Summer were talking to some partners. Summer wore an overly ornate pink dress, trying to look like a hostess, but her inexperienced air and ostentation gave her away. Damien looked smug, a glass in his hand, laughing and talking nonstop. He was enjoying his new status. When Damien turned and saw me, the smile was wiped from his face. He almost dropped his glass. Summer followed his gaze. When she recognized me, her beautiful face changed from surprise to jealousy and distrust. I smiled, raised my glass to them from a distance, and, with Lawyer Montgomery, walked calmly toward them. The closer I got, the more evident the bewilderment on Damien's face became. "Madison, what are you doing here?" he stammered. "Why wouldn't I be here?" I replied calmly. "It's a construction industry gala. Oh, I forgot to introduce myself." I turned to the partners who were with Damien, with a tone of voice loud enough for those around to hear. "I am Madison Thorne, president of the Thorne Investment Foundation. We recently acquired a majority stake in Eastside Builders. It's a pleasure to meet you." There was a silence. The name Eastside Builders was not unknown. That a mysterious investment fund had bought it had been the topic of conversation for the last few weeks. No one had imagined that I was behind it. Damien looked at me with disbelief. "Investment Foundation? President? Where did you get the money?" He realized his indiscretion and fell silent. "That's not something you should worry about," I replied without erasing the smile. "Instead, you should worry about the Kincaid Group. I've heard you're very interested in the public housing project." "What a coincidence. Eastside Builders is also very interested. I hope we have a fair competition." Summer, who had remained silent, suddenly intervened with a sour voice. "Fair? What do you know about construction to compete? You're nothing but a woman who uses men's money to put on airs." I turned to Summer. My gaze hardened. "Honey, when I was building a company from scratch with my ex-husband, you were probably still in high school. It's better that you don't get involved in adult matters. Besides, in a place as elegant as this, you should watch your manners, lest people think they didn't teach you any at home." My words were like an invisible slap. Her face flushed with anger and shame. "How dare you call me rude?" "I didn't say that. Did you take it personally?" I shrugged. Summer lost control. She raised her hand, but Damien stopped her. "Summer, that's enough!" he snapped in a low voice, pale with embarrassment. The confrontation had attracted too much attention. A member of the organization approached uncomfortably. "Mrs. Kincaid, are you not feeling well? We can—" Summer broke free from Damien, glared at me, and shouted, "Get away!" She turned around and left furiously. Damien apologized awkwardly to everyone and ran after her. The scene ended quickly. I stayed there, calmly drinking my wine. The people around me looked at me differently, with a mixture of curiosity and respect. They had understood that the Madison of today was no longer a woman who was easy to intimidate. I had officially declared war, and I was going to win this battle. After the gala, the name Madison Thorne and the Thorne Investment Foundation became the talk of the business world in New York City. Damien and the Kincaid Group must have been unsettled. However, I knew that a better offer was not enough to guarantee victory. The Kincaid Group had been in the industry for years, and their connections could not be underestimated. They surely had other aces up their sleeves. "We have their bid file, but something doesn't add up," I told Julian in a meeting. Damien's attitude at the party after the initial shock was still quite confident. "Does he think he can win?" Julian nodded thoughtfully. "I think so too. Submitting a bid with irregularities in the materials with such confidence means they believe someone will turn a blind eye. It's very likely they've pulled some strings behind the scenes." Our investigation target was quickly defined: Director Davis, head of the city's construction projects office, the person with the final say. Mr. Davis had a reputation for being discreet, but he had a weak point. His son, who was studying at an expensive university in California with costs that far exceeded his civil servant salary. Julian's team was very efficient. In 1 week, they discovered a suspicious flow of money. A large sum had been transferred from a shell company of the Kincaid Group to the account of a distant relative of Director Davis's wife. Days later, that money was sent to California to his son as a talent scholarship from an unknown educational foundation. The trail was intricate, but not for our financial experts. "And there's more," Julian said, flipping to another page. "We've investigated the engineering firm that prepared the technical proposal for the Kincaid Group. It's Atlas Designs, and its director, Mr. Alvarez, is Summer's maternal uncle." I smiled ironically. A perfect network of interests. The family of the future wife united to plunder public funds. Damien had planned everything, but he didn't count on me showing up to mess it all up. "Gather all the evidence," I told Julian. "Bank statements, photos of Damien meeting privately with Director Davis in a discreet restaurant, statements from disgruntled employees of Atlas Designs. We need an airtight case." While Julian focused on the evidence of bribery, I pressured the Kincaid Group from another front, the material suppliers. With the financial power of Thorne and the growing reputation of East Side builders, I met privately with the main cement and steel suppliers who worked with the Kincaid Group. I didn't need to say much. I offered them exclusive long-term contracts with better prices and a subtle warning about the risk of associating with a group suspected of illegal practices. Business people are very shrewd. They understood that the Kincaid Group's ship was sinking and looked for a safer lifeboat. In a short time, several important suppliers announced the cessation of their collaboration with the Kincaid Group, citing various reasons. Their supply chain broke, their ongoing projects came to a halt, and their stocks began to plummet. Damien's family fell into a real crisis, and this was only the prelude to the symphony of revenge I had composed for them. The day of the bid opening was approaching, and it would be the day the final curtain fell. The day of the bid opening was held in a solemn but tense atmosphere in the auditorium of City Hall. All interested parties were present, representatives of the construction companies, the project committee, and numerous journalists. Lawyer Montgomery and I sat in the front row. Across from us, not far away, were Damien and his father, Mr. Kincaid, president of the Kincaid Group. Mr. Kincaid was a man in his 50s, with a severe face but a cold and calculating gaze. When the results were announced, the room erupted. East Side Builders, with the backing of the Thorne Foundation, had officially won the bid. But that wasn't all. Immediately after, a representative of the Inspector General's office took the stage. He announced that during the review of the files, they had discovered serious irregularities in the Kincaid Group's proposal. Not only did they intend to use inferior quality materials, but there were also indications of collusion and bribery of a public official. The entire case, including the evidence Julian had secretly provided, would be referred to the police for a full investigation. It was a total shock. The camera flashes exploded, all pointing at Mr. Kincaid and his son. Their faces, already disappointed, turned white with panic. Mr. Kincaid almost fell and had to lean on his chair. Damien stared at me, his eyes bloodshot, filled with hatred and disbelief. I stared back at him calmly and nodded slightly, like a final goodbye. The subsequent press conference was a resounding success for us. We committed to executing the project with the highest quality, providing safe and decent homes. My image and Thorne's filled the headlines with praise, in total contrast to the Kincaid Group's scandal. That afternoon, while I was in my office, Damien burst in. He didn't come through the main door, but through the emergency exit, avoiding everyone. His face no longer had its usual neat look. He was haggard and disheveled. "Madison, was it you, wasn't it?" he yelled, hitting my desk. "I don't know what you're talking about," I replied calmly, leaning back in my chair. "The Kincaid Group does shady business and gets caught. What do I have to do with it?" "Don't pretend!" Damien yelled, his eyes wide. The bid leak, the suppliers canceling the contracts, and the bribery thing. If it wasn't you, then who? Do you hate me that much?" "Hate you?" I smiled with disdain. "You overestimate yourself, Damien. You don't deserve that much. I'm simply taking back what's mine and teaching some scammers a lesson." Damien was breathless. He came around the table, looking at me as if he wanted to devour me. "Do you think you've won? Do you think money is everything? Let me tell you something. Your family isn't so saintly either. Don't forget about the trade secrets revelation case from 10 years ago. Your father fell into disgrace because of that, too." As he said that, we both froze. He seemed to realize his mistake and fell silent, but it was too late. The case from 10 years ago. I vaguely remembered that my father's company suffered a great setback, almost going bankrupt. My father said a partner had betrayed him, revealing an important patent, but he never gave details or said who that partner was. I didn't ask, so as not to reopen the wound. "What does that case have to do with your family?" I asked. My voice began to tremble. A bad feeling ran down my spine. Damien looked at me with a malicious glint of triumph. He had found my weak point. "You want to know? Well, ask your father at his grave, or investigate who stabbed him in the back." With that, he let out a demented laugh and left, leaving me alone in the huge office with a question and a terrible suspicion sown in my heart. The case from 10 years ago, my father and the Kincaid family. What was the connection between them? Damien's words stuck in my mind like a poisoned needle. As soon as he left, I called lawyer Montgomery. I asked him to use all his resources to reinvestigate the trade secrets revelation case of my father's company from 10 years ago, focusing especially on any connection to the Kincaid Group. My heart was pounding. I had a feeling I was about to discover a terrible secret, a truth that could change everything. While waiting for Julian's results, I didn't sit idly by. The war against the Kincaids had to continue. Destroying their business was only one part. I wanted to attack what they valued most, the honor and pride of their lineage. I investigated the Kincaid family. They were a family with a long tradition, very attached to their roots and the legacy of their ancestors. Their greatest pride was a large estate in the Hamptons, with a family chapel built on a plot of land with excellent feng shui. Every year on important holidays, the entire Kincaid clan would gather there. For Damien's mother, a woman who had always been proud of her ancestry, that place was more sacred than her own life. A bold and cruel plan formed in my mind. I immediately sent people from Thorne to buy all the agricultural land surrounding the Kincaid estate. With our financial power, the operation was done in the blink of an eye. The farmers, eager to sell for a good price, signed without hesitation in the face of such a generous offer. In 1 week, all the lands surrounding the Kincaid chapel were mine. The next step was something no one expected. Through official channels, I made a request to donate all the newly acquired lands to the town with a specific proposal to build a waste treatment and transfer plant for the entire region. My arguments were impeccable. The area was growing, the amount of waste was increasing, and a centralized place was needed to manage it and protect the environment. The location was ideal, far from residential areas and with good access. The news spread. The town council applauded my act of civic duty. The local residents were happy that the garbage problem would finally be solved. Only one family was on pins and needles. The Kincaids could not believe that their sacred ancestral place of worship was about to be surrounded by a mountain of garbage. The smell, the flies, the trucks coming in and out day and night, the ruined feng shui, the trampled family honor. It was an unbearable humiliation. Just as I expected, the first one to explode was Damien's mother. She came directly to my building to make a scene. Security prevented her from going up to my penthouse, so she stayed in the lobby, shouting and insulting. I watched her calmly from the security cameras. Finally, I gave her permission to come up. Mrs. Adela Kincaid burst into my apartment like a hurricane. Her usual distinguished look had disappeared, replaced by a furious and reddened face. "You botch! How dare you do something so vile!" she hissed, pointing at me. I calmly served a cup of tea and offered it to her. "Mrs. Kincaid, please, let's talk calmly. If you scream, the neighbors are going to think badly." I don't care, she said, swatting the cup out of my hand, where it shattered on the floor. You have to stop that disgusting project right now. I'll give you whatever money you want, but withdraw the land donation. I smiled slightly. What are you saying, ma'am? I'm just doing something good for the community. Or does the Kincaid family not like to see a cleaner city? You! Mrs. Adela trembled with rage. You're doing this to get revenge on Damien, on this whole family. You are a twisted, evil woman. Let me tell you something. You won't be able to beat us. 10 years ago, your father faced us, and look how he ended up. Don't you remember? Don't make his same mistake. A glint appeared in my eyes. I had been waiting for that phrase. Ah, so that's it. So 10 years ago, it was you, the Kincaids, who ruined my father? Mrs. Adela froze, realizing her slip, but her arrogance prevented her from backing down. So what? It was because he was a fool. He didn't know his limits. And you're just the same. Thank you for the information, I said, lifting my phone that was recording. Our entire conversation, including your threats and your confession, has been recorded. I think the police will be very interested in this tape. Mrs. Adela's face turned white as paper. She stared at the phone, stammering. Now please leave. I won't see you out, I said in a glacial voice. And tell Damien that if he wants to fix this, he should come see me with a more sincere attitude and not send his mother to make a fool of herself. Mrs. Adela left, staggering, completely defeated. I watched her go with a cold smile on my lips. Did the Kincaids like this surprise gift? The scandal of the ex-mother-in-law harassing her ex-daughter-in-law became the talk of the town. The audio recording that was accidentally leaked, where Mrs. Adela not only threatened me, but admitted her family's involvement in my father's downfall 10 years ago, caused an earthquake. The Kincaid Group's reputation, already in the gutter after the bidding scandal, was completely destroyed. The remaining partners rushed to cut ties. The Kincaid family was completely isolated. In these circumstances, Damien had no choice but to change tactics. He knew that aggression and threats didn't work with me. He decided to go back to the role he played best, the victim. He summoned me to a quiet tea room in an alley. I accepted. I wanted to see what new trick he would pull out of his sleeve. Damien arrived looking pitiful, unshaven, with wrinkled clothes and deep dark circles under his eyes. He looked 10 years older. As soon as he saw me, instead of sitting down, he knelt on the floor. "Madison, I beg you," he said in a broken voice as tears ran down his face. "I know I was wrong. Everything is my fault. I'm a wretch, a bastard. The money and that woman blinded me. Please, forgive me. Forgive my family. Hit me, yell at me, do whatever you want, but don't take it out on my parents. They are old. They won't be able to handle this blow." He spoke while hitting his head against the floor. It was a masterful, very convincing performance. If I were the Madison of a year ago, I might have softened, but now my heart was made of stone. I sat there calmly enjoying my tea, watching his act. "Get up," I said without emotion. "The floor is dirty." Seeing that I didn't react, Damien looked up with bloodshot eyes. "Madison, I know you still feel something for me, right? We had 5 happy years. I will divorce Summer. I'll come back to you. We will start over. And as for the Kincaid Group, I will tell my father to sell you everything at the lowest price as an apology. Just withdraw the waste plant project and tell the police that everything was a misunderstanding, okay?" I let out a cold laugh. "Damien, do you take me for a fool? Sell me a company drowning in debt and legal scandals so I can solve your problems? You're a top-notch calculator. Your pleas are as false as your calculations." Damien's face changed. He knew I had him figured out. His victim expression disappeared, replaced by barely disguised anger. He stood up with a jump. "Madison, you're going too far." "Me? Going too far? Or is it that you people have never known what respect is?" I retorted. At that moment, the door of the tea room opened. Lawyer Montgomery walked in. He had been waiting outside according to my plan. He approached, put a protective hand on my shoulder, and looked at Damien coldly. "Mr. Hawthorne, it seems the conversation isn't going well. If you intend to threaten my client, we will call the police immediately." Damien looked at Julian and suddenly turned pale, his eyes wide with panic. He stammered, pointing at him. You are the low-life lawyer who represented Iria's family in the lawsuit 10 years ago." Both Julian and I were stunned. I turned to Julian with a sense of chaos inside me. My father's lawyer in that lawsuit was Julian? Why had he never told me? Damien let out a demented laugh. "Ha ha, how good. So you were in cahoots from the beginning to deceive me. How clever you are. You even got your old boyfriend back to get revenge on your ex-husband. What a show." "What nonsense are you talking about?" Julian yelled. But it was too late. Damien's words were like a hammer blow to my head. Everything was getting more complicated than I thought. Julian, the person I trusted most, my father's loyal partner. Who was he really in this story from the past? And why had he hidden it from me? 1,000 unanswered questions arose in my mind. After Damien left with his malevolent smile, the atmosphere in the tea room became heavy. I turned to look at Julian directly. For the first time since we had worked together, I looked at him with suspicion. The absolute trust I had in him had cracked. "Julian," I said, trying to stay calm, "is it true what Damien said? Were you my father's lawyer 10 years ago?" Julian didn't avoid my gaze. He nodded with an expression of discomfort and remorse. "Yes, ma'am. Back then, I was a recent graduate with no experience. I did everything I could." "But why didn't you tell me?" I interrupted him, my voice rising. "Why did you hide something so important from me? Or do you also have something to hide in all of this?" "No, it's not like that," Julian hastened to explain. "I didn't tell you because I didn't want to reopen a wound. That case was a great failure in my career, and my biggest regret for not having been able to help Mr. Thorne. When he came back to me to manage the trust fund, he asked me not to mention the past. He said he didn't want it to affect you." His explanation seemed logical, but doubt had already taken root in my heart. "Damien called you my old boyfriend. Although I know it was just to provoke, it made me feel uncomfortable. I needed to discover the truth for myself." "I'll believe you for now," I said, getting up. "But from today on, I want you to inform me of everything, without hiding absolutely anything from me." I left the tea room with a heavy heart. I felt alone again on this path. I could no longer fully trust anyone. The words of Damien and his mother echoed in my head. Your father's same mistake. I had to discover what happened 10 years ago. I suddenly remembered something. My family's old house where I grew up. I had recently authorized its demolition to build a shopping center. All my parents' memories had been removed, but I had a premonition that my father might have left something important that he didn't want anyone to find. I drove directly to the construction site. The house was no longer there, only rubble and half-demolished walls. Dust covered everything. I spoke to the site manager and asked him to temporarily stop the demolition in the area of my father's old office. "Please, have your men be careful in this area," I said, pointing to the foundation. My father was very meticulous. He might have hidden important documents. The manager looked at me with skepticism, but nodded. I stood there under the scorching sun, watching every shovelful of dirt. Time passed slowly. When I was about to give up, a worker yelled, "Ma'am, there's something here." I ran over there. Under the old concrete floor, after lifting a rotten wooden board, there was a small metal box rusted by time. My heart was pounding. This was it. The worker helped me get the box out. The lock was so rusty that it couldn't be opened. We had to use an iron bar to pry it open. Inside, carefully wrapped in a faded silk cloth, there was an old, worn leather notebook. With trembling hands, I opened the notebook. My father's familiar handwriting appeared before me. It was his diary. I sat on a pile of bricks, not caring about the dust, and began to read. Page after page, the diary revealed a painful past I had never known. My father and Mr. Kincaid had been great friends, starting from scratch together. They had developed a revolutionary patent for building materials, but greed changed Mr. Kincaid. He stole the patent, registered it in his name, and expelled my father from the company they had founded together. My father took him to court. The young and passionate but inexperienced lawyer who defended him was Julian. The diary detailed my father's months of solitary struggle. Mr. Kincaid used his money and power to buy witnesses and falsify evidence. My father lost the lawsuit humiliatingly. He not only lost his creation, but also his best friend. His company was crushed by the Kincaid Group to the point of bankruptcy. My father's greatest pain was not the material loss, but the betrayal. And then the last page of the diary left me petrified. My father had written, "Don't trust Kincaid so much. It's not just about the patent. There seems to be a deeper grudge that I don't know about. He has sworn he will make my whole family pay, that he will make my daughter suffer. I must protect Madison at all costs." I closed the diary. Tears streamed down my cheeks. Now I understood everything. Damien approached me, married me, not for love, but as part of his father's cruel revenge plan. My marriage, my happiness, everything had been a play built on the hatred of the previous generation. My hatred was no longer just toward Damien, but toward the entire Kincaid family. I would not only take revenge for myself, but also for my father. It took me several days to calm down from the shock of my father's diary. The hatred between our families was much deeper than I had imagined. It was no longer the story of an unfaithful husband, but a revenge conspiracy spanning a generation. This only strengthened my determination. Meanwhile, Damien's family's situation was getting worse. The Kincaid Group was on the verge of bankruptcy, with bank debts they couldn't pay. The luxurious apartment where Damien and Summer lived was about to be repossessed. From being a rich girl, Summer had to face the harsh reality. And when the ship sinks, the rats are the first to flee. One night, I received a call from an unknown number. A familiar but fearful voice sounded on the other end. It's me, Summer." I was a little surprised. "Why are you calling me?" I want to see you. There are some things I think you'll be very interested to see," Summer said hesitantly. "But it has to be a secret. Damien can't find out." I hesitated. I didn't know what she was up to, but my gut told me it could be an opportunity. "Okay, I'll decide the time and place." We met at a small cafe hidden in an alley. I arrived early and chose a discreet corner to observe. Shortly after, Summer arrived. She was no longer the glamorous, arrogant young woman from before. Now she looked exhausted and haggard. She wore a simple dress, a mask, and sunglasses, looking around nervously. On her arm, I saw a bruise. "Sit down," I said. Summer sat down and took off her mask and glasses. Her beautiful face had some scratches and a swollen lip. "It was Damien, wasn't it?" I asked, although I already knew the answer. She nodded, her eyes full of tears. "Since the company started having problems, he has changed completely. He drinks, gambles, and then takes his anger out on me. He says it's all my fault, that my family is useless for not helping him. He's a monster." I remained silent without showing compassion. It was the path she had chosen. "You didn't call me just to complain, did you?" Summer took a deep breath to calm herself down. She took a small black USB drive from her purse and slid it to me. "Here's everything you need," she said. "Damien is very careful, but also very arrogant. He keeps all the evidence of his illegal business dealings, money laundering contracts, secret accounting books, everything on his personal computer. He thinks no one can touch it, but I made a copy of everything." I looked at the USB and then at Summer. "Why are you doing this? Why are you betraying him?" Summer smiled bitterly. "Betray him? He betrayed me first. He promised me a life of luxury, and now what? We're drowning in debt. He even stole my last savings to pay off his gambling debts. I was a fool to believe in someone like him." "And what do I get out of this?" I asked directly. "Something that I think is most important to you," she said, leaning closer. I overheard a conversation between Damien and his father. They were talking about the plan to take revenge on your family. Damien recorded that conversation with his phone as a way to keep his father in check. I found that recording. It's all on this USB. My heart pounded. There it was, the definitive proof that unmasked the entire Kincaid conspiracy. "What do you want in return?" $5 million, Summer said, "and a plane ticket to get out of the country. I don't want to stay here for another second. I want to start over." "Deal," I said without hesitation. "After I verify that what's here is real, you'll have what you want." I took the USB drive. As I was about to get up, Summer stopped me. "One more thing," she said hesitantly. "There's an encrypted folder called Julian. I tried to open it, but I couldn't. I don't know what it contains, but I've seen Damien check it often. Maybe it has to do with your lawyer." I froze. Julian. Again. Julian. The suspicion resurfaced strongly. I nodded at Summer and left quickly. Back at the office, I connected the USB. What Summer said was true. Countless pieces of evidence of Damien's and the Kincaid Group's crimes. And there was the recording, the voices of Damien and Mr. Kincaid detailing the plan to ruin my father. How Damien was supposed to seduce and deceive me to seize the Thorns' fortune and avenge the grudge of the past. I gritted my teeth and clenched my fists so hard that my knuckles turned white. Hatred consumed me, but I forced myself to remain calm. I looked for the encrypted folder called Julian. Just as Summer said, it required a complex password. I knew I couldn't open it on my own, but I also couldn't give it to Julian. What should I do? This small USB drive was my ultimate weapon, and at the same time a ticking time bomb that could destroy everything. Holding the USB, I felt as if it was burning in my hand. It contained the power to destroy the Kincaid family, but also sowed in me a great doubt about Julian, the person I leaned on the most. I couldn't act blindly. The first thing I did was keep my promise to Summer. I transferred $5 million to her overseas account and bought her a first-class ticket to Canada. I didn't want to have someone as unreliable as her nearby. Only when I was sure she had left the country did I feel calm. Then I had to deal with the Julian file. I decided not to confront him directly. If he really was hiding something, he would never admit it. In secret, I contacted a top-level cybersecurity expert, someone with no ties to the business or legal world of New York. To ensure confidentiality, I gave him the USB and asked him to crack the password at all costs. While I waited, I tried to act normally with Julian, but the distance and distrust were evident. I no longer shared my thoughts with him so openly. He seemed to notice. The atmosphere between us became tense. One afternoon, unable to bear it anymore, I called him into my office. I decided to test him one last time. "Julian," I said, looking him in the eyes, "I've been thinking a lot about the case from 10 years ago. I want to know the truth. How much did the Kincaids pay you to keep quiet?" I said it harshly, using the words paid and quiet to see his reaction. A trace of pain crossed his face. "Mrs. Thorne, I already told you, things are not what you think," he said in a firm voice. "I cannot reveal the details because of the duty of confidentiality to my client, your father. Please, believe me." "Believe you?" I laughed bitterly. "How do you expect me to believe you if you insist on hiding the truth from me? My father was your client, but I am his daughter. I have the right to know." Our discussion was intensifying when the office door burst open. Amelia, my former assistant, ran in covered in bruises. Her clothes were torn. She had a cut on her forehead that was bleeding, and she was pale with fear. "Mrs. Thorne," she cried, hugging me. "Amelia, what happened to you?" I held her, horrified. "Who did this to you?" Julian also ran toward us, concerned. "Call an ambulance." "No, you don't have to," Amelia said, breathless. "I'm fine. I have to tell you something." Trembling, she took another phone with a broken screen from her pocket. "After I gave you the USB, I felt guilty for my cousin, but I knew the Kincaids were bad people. I went back to the old office, pretending I was looking for something, and placed a microphone in Damien's office. I got evidence that he transferred more money to another official to avoid prison, but he discovered me. He hit me and took the phone with the recording. Luckily, I was able to send the file to this backup phone." She was trembling as she spoke. "He said, He said he wouldn't leave either you or me alone. Mrs. Thorne, I'm so scared." I hugged her tightly, feeling a mix of anger toward Damien and compassion for this innocent girl who had risked herself for me. Damien had become a cornered animal. He was willing to do anything. "Calm down, I'm here," I soothed her, but my heart was a whirlwind. "Julian, call security to reinforce our protection and alert the police. This time, I won't let him escape." The situation had become extremely dangerous. I knew I couldn't wait any longer. I had to deliver the final blow before Damien hurt anyone else. Damien had gone mad and dangerous. I knew he would stop at nothing to silence those who knew his secrets. I couldn't just sit and wait for his next move. I decided to strike the final blow, a public one that wouldn't give him a chance to defend himself. I announced to the media that the Thorne Foundation would host a large charity gala at the Palace Hotel in New York City, one of the most luxurious venues in the city. The purpose was to raise funds to help female victims of domestic violence and struggling entrepreneurs. All the business, political, and social elite were invited. I knew that even if they didn't want to, Mr. Kincaid and Damien would have to attend. Their absence from such a significant event would only worsen their public image. I prepared the gala with care. It wasn't just a charity event, it was my final stage. I had prepared a video with all the evidence against Damien. The photos with Summer while he faked being sick, the recording of the conversation with his father about the revenge plan, the documents of embezzlement, money laundering, and bribery. Everything would be projected at the gala. On the night of the event, I showed up in a sparkling black evening gown, like a starry sky. I wanted to be the darkness that was about to devour my enemy. Julian accompanied me, but there was an invisible distance between us. He didn't know my plan, and I didn't know his secret. The gala was spectacular. Lights, classical music, glasses of champagne, and superficial conversations. The Kincaids arrived. Mr. Kincaid looked haggard and aged. Damien tried to maintain his composure, but his gaze kept looking for me, full of resentment and fear. At the height of the night, I went on stage. All the spotlights focused on me. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began in a firm, clear voice, "we are here to help women who have had less luck. I myself am a woman who has suffered betrayal, deception, and pain. The story I'm about to tell you is the inspiration for this foundation." I made a signal. The large screen behind me lit up, and the video began. The room fell silent and then erupted in murmurs of astonishment as Damien's true face was revealed. He and his father's faces turned white. They tried to flee, but my security team stopped them. "Madison, how dare you!" Damien yelled in desperation. When the video ended with images of Amelia's injuries, I took the microphone again, my voice choked. "And this is the brave young woman who helped me uncover the truth and who was brutally assaulted by this criminal. She should have been here tonight." At that moment, Damien, in a fit of madness, snatched a microphone from the band. "It's all lies. That butch is slandering me. Don't believe her. The true despicable person is the lawyer standing next to her. It was he who, 10 years ago, accepted a bribe from my father to harm them." The room was shocked again. All eyes turned to Julian. He was paralyzed, pale. In the midst of that chaos, my phone vibrated. It was a hospital number. A bad feeling came over me. "Hello, is this Madison Thorne?" a nurse said in an alarmed voice. "We're calling to inform you that Miss Amelia just suffered a serious car accident in front of the hotel. A witness says the driver who hit her was Mr. Damien Hawthorne." The phone fell from my hands. All the sound around me faded. I only saw Julian's horrified face and Damien's demented smile before everything went black. I don't know how I got to the hospital. Everything was blurry. I only saw the white light of the hallways and smelled disinfectant. Julian was running beside me, calling out to me, but I couldn't hear anything. My mind could only see Amelia in a pool of blood and the nurse's words. "It's all my fault. If I hadn't gotten her into this." We arrived at the emergency room. The door was closed, the red light of the operating room on. I collapsed into a seat, trembling uncontrollably. Guilt and helplessness gnawed at me. Julian sat next to me and put a hand on my shoulder. "Madison, calm down. Amelia, she'll be okay." "Calm down?" I yelled, crying. "How do you want me to calm down? Amelia is in there fighting for her life, and the person who did this to her is still free, the one who slandered you too." I turned to him, my face bathed in tears. "Tell me the truth. What's that about a bribe that Damien said? Are you still going to hide it from me at this point?" Julian looked at me with an expression of pain and remorse. He clenched his fists and finally, with great determination, spoke in a hoarse voice. "Okay, I'll tell you everything, but promise me that no matter what you hear, you will remain calm." He told me that 10 years ago, after my father lost the lawsuit, he was devastated. He knew he couldn't defeat Mr. Kincaid through legal channels, but he didn't give up. He secretly met with him and threatened him with evidence of tax evasion by the Kincaid Group, forcing him to pay him compensation. The money that Damien called a bribe was actually the compensation your father wrung from the Kincaids. But to save face, they signed a confidentiality agreement that, as a lawyer, I had to respect. That's why I couldn't tell you. I swore to your father. I was stunned. My father had not been weak. He had fought in his own way. "But that's not all," Julian continued in a somber voice. "After your father's death, I always felt that something didn't add up. His health deteriorated too quickly. I investigated on my own and discovered something terrible." He looked at me with difficulty. "Madison, it's possible that your father didn't die of an illness. I have evidence that suggests Mr. Kincaid was slowly poisoning him for a long time with a hard-to-detect herb. It made the symptoms look like old age, but in reality, it was murder." My blood ran cold. Poisoning, murder. My enemy was not just a scammer, he was a cold-blooded murderer. He not only ruined my father, he took his life. A supreme hatred, capable of burning everything, came over me. At that moment, the operating room door opened. A doctor came out, exhausted. "Family of the patient, Amelia." "She has passed the critical phase," he said, taking off his mask. "She was lucky, but the impact was very strong. She suffered a traumatic brain injury and multiple other injuries. She will need a long time to recover, and whether she wakes up or not, only time will tell." Julian and I sighed in relief, but my heart was still heavy. They moved Amelia to the ICU. We could only see her through a window. Her face was pale, her head bandaged, surrounded by wires and machines. Suddenly, the hospital was plunged into chaos. Screams, nurses, and guards running. "He's there! Get him!" A drunken, staggering figure ran toward us. It was Damien. He had escaped from the hotel and somehow gotten here, surely to check if Amelia was dead. "Madison, you're here!" he yelled, his eyes bloodshot with alcohol and hatred. "It's all your fault. You destroyed my life." The guards tried to subdue him, but he resisted furiously. In the struggle, he pointed at Julian and me and laughed like a maniac. "You think you've won? My father killed your father, and I'll kill you too." "Yes, it was my father who killed him. He killed him slowly, with pain. Do you hear me?" His confession echoed down the hallway. Everyone froze. Just then, the police arrived. They handcuffed him and took him away while he continued to shout. Everything happened very quickly. His confession in front of the police and multiple witnesses became irrefutable proof. But I didn't feel satisfied, only immense exhaustion. They allowed us to go in and see Amelia. I sat beside her and took her cold hand. Suddenly, her fingers moved. Her eyes opened slowly. "Mrs. Thorne?" Her voice was a whisper. "Amelia, you've woken up." "I have to tell you," she said with difficulty. "I'm not a simple assistant. I'm Mr. Kincaid's illegitimate daughter. Julian and I were petrified. My mother was deceived and abandoned by him," she continued, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I approached you to get revenge on him. I found the final proof. The suicide letter he wrote, confessing everything, is in the safe at the old Kincaid estate. You have to get it." With that, she fainted from exhaustion. But her words had revealed the last piece of the puzzle. A truth no one could have imagined. The news about Amelia's true identity and the confession letter somehow reached Damien's ears while he was in custody, probably through a corrupt police officer. For Damien, it was the final blow. He knew that if that letter came to light, his family would be finished. The madness pushed him to his last act. Taking advantage of a moment of carelessness during a transfer, he attacked the police and escaped. His only objective now was the hospital, to silence Amelia and destroy me. After hearing Amelia, Julian and I alerted the police and prepared to go to the Kincaid estate, but a bad feeling came over me. I didn't feel calm leaving Amelia alone. "Julian, you go with the police. I'll stay here a little longer to wait for news from the doctors." Julian hesitated, but agreed. "Be very careful. I'll be right back." When they left, I went back to Amelia's room. The hospital at night was silent. As I walked down the hallway, a shadow came out of a corner, covered my mouth, and dragged me away. The smell of alcohol and sour sweat hit me. It was Damien. He took me to the underground parking lot, a deserted place with no cameras. He took out a knife and put it to my throat. "You thought you had won, you beach!" he hissed. "As soon as you and my bastard half-sister disappear, it'll all be over." "Damien, are you crazy? Give yourself up." I tried to stay calm. "Give myself up? To rot in prison? Never! I'll take you to meet your father." He dragged me toward his car. At that moment, a shout echoed. "Damien!" It was Julian. He had come back. He hadn't felt at ease. Seeing him, Damien became even more violent. "You're just in time. You'll die together like two lovebirds." He pushed me hard and lunged at Julian with the knife. The two men struggled. Julian, though not a fighter, defended himself bravely to protect me. In the middle of the chaos, I grabbed a fire extinguisher and hit him in the back with all my strength. Damien staggered, the knife falling from his hand. Julian took advantage to knock him down and pin him. Just then, the police siren sounded. They had noticed something strange and had returned. Dozens of armed officers surrounded us. This time, Damien had no escape. He was handcuffed and arrested. His gaze was still full of hatred toward me. I stood there, breathless, feeling my legs giving way. Julian ran to hug me. "Are you okay? Did he hurt you?" I shook my head and buried my face in his chest, feeling his warmth and safety. The nightmare was finally over. With the help of the police, we arrived at the old Kincaid chapel. The safe was hidden behind an old tapestry. Inside, just as Amelia said, there was a yellowed envelope. I opened it with trembling hands. It was a long letter written by Mr. Kincaid. In it, he confessed everything. The ancestral hatred between our families, the envy that consumed his friendship with my father, the theft of the patent, and the slow poisoning of his old friend. At the end of the letter, there was a late repentance and a plea for forgiveness. Along with the letter, a small vial of poison, probably for him to take his own life. Holding the letter, I felt a mix of emotions. My enemy had exposed his own crimes, but I didn't feel victorious, just tired and sad for a life consumed by hatred. When I got home, I looked through my father's diary again. Tucked into the last page, a small piece of paper I had overlooked fell out. It was my father's handwriting, written in his last days. "Madison, my love, I know the whole truth about Mr. Kincaid now. I have found a copy of the letter of repentance he was hiding. Hatred destroyed him and almost destroyed me, but in the end, I choose to forgive because I don't want my daughter to live trapped in this cycle of hatred. Live a life in peace, my daughter. That is the greatest legacy I leave you." Tears streamed down my cheeks. My father had known everything and had chosen forgiveness. My great father. I understood that ultimate revenge is not to destroy the enemy, but to free oneself from the chains of hatred. I decided to stop. I gave all the evidence to the police, but only filed charges for the crimes personally committed by Damien: attempted murder of Amelia, embezzlement, kidnapping, and death threats. The blood debt of the previous generation, I decided to close it just as my father had wished. A year later, the Thorn Foundation grew stronger. I helped countless women in difficult situations. Amelia, after a long rehabilitation, recovered miraculously. She decided to use part of her inheritance to manage the foundation with me. Summer, from Canada, sent me a letter of thanks. She had started a new life, studying something she was passionate about. Damien was sentenced to 20 years in prison. His mother, after so many blows, sank into a deep depression. I made sure she was admitted to a luxury nursing home with all expenses covered by my foundation. Today is a sunny day. Julian and I are visiting my father's grave. I leave a bouquet of white flowers. "Dad, I followed your advice," I whisper, "and I have found my peace." Julian takes my hand. "I'm sure wherever he is very proud of you." We looked at each other and smiled. Our love had bloomed naturally through the storm. It was not passionate and loud, but deep and solid, built on understanding and trust. As we were leaving, a prison van passed by. Through the window, I saw a familiar face, haggard and lifeless. It was Damien on a transfer for a medical visit. He also saw us. His gaze no longer contained hatred, only an absolute emptiness. I looked away, squeezed Julian's hand, turned, and walked with him toward the sun. The past was left behind. A happy future awaited us.